Thank you, Jamie Lula. Do you ever take anything personally? No, not you. No. You know, somebody says something or does something and we feel hurt by it. And then maybe we get angry about it. How dare them? Yeah, probably most people do that, right? Most people take things personally, I'm guessing. And it causes so much pain and suffering, doesn't it? All that energy spent on, how dare she say that? And, oh, did he mean that? And, am I that way? And all the stuff we go through because we take stuff personally. Wouldn't it be nice to be free of taking things personally? Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, it would. That's our goal for today, is to free ourselves from taking things personally. I wish I could say that by the end of this message, you'll never take anything personally again. But it's not likely. However, we will have some tools and techniques to be able to start freeing ourselves more from taking things personally. You may have seen in the news recently that our President Joe Biden made a few comments and had a reporter who apparently all the reporters were leaving the room, and President thought that the mics were off, and the reporter, as he was leaving the room, shouted out something about, "Do you think inflation is good for your administration?" And President Biden, thinking the camera was off, said some sarcastic words and then called the guy a stupid son of a gun, only he used more colorful language than that. And then, he called the reporter an hour later, apologized, and said, "It's not personal." Now, even at that high level, this happens. I mean, how now the reporter and Joe Biden have sparred back and forth on issues, and how could that reporter not take it personally? He called him a son of a gun. Well, that's what we're talking about today, right? I'm not making a political statement about, anything. It just happens to be in the news this week. They must have been reading our talk title for today and wanted to give us an illustration. Thank you. So at all levels of whatever, people are dealing with this. And I think the first way to begin to deal with not taking things personally is to understand that we see the world not as it is, we see the world as we are. I see the world not as it is, I see the world as I am. What does that mean? Years ago, I had this lady named Virginia Dunstone. She was a seminar leader and a speaker, and she shared how her husband, anytime her husband would turn his back on her for whatever reason, she would get nervous and upset and anxious. And he would feel, he'd take it personally. What I don't mean anything by it. I'm not trying to be mean or upset or anything about it. Don't turn your back on me, right? Well, turns out she came to realize that was something that was from her childhood. When she was a little girl, her dad took her fishing. And there was a pier there, and her dad was casting his line and so on. Well, she went, as a little child, went up on the pier. And she fell overboard into the water and started to struggle. And when she would look back to her dad looking for help, he was fishing and his back was to her. Fortunately, there were other people on the pier who saw her, reached down, pulled her out to safety. Throughout her life, when her husband would turn his back, she would feel that anxiety and fear and upset. It wasn't personal. It was her stuff that she was carrying. People say things about us, they perceive us in certain ways. It may not be the truth of who we are. Most likely, it's their stuff. The world is not as it is. We see the world as we are. Now, here's the thing that scientists tell us. We don't really see the world as it is. We don't actually see the objects, right? When you look in a mirror, are you seeing the objects? No. When you look in a mirror and you look in your eyes or your face, you're not really seeing your eyes and your face, are you? You're seeing a reflection. You might see objects, from the mirror. You're not really seeing objects, you're seeing reflections. Now, think about the people and the things we see in our world. You're not really seeing those things, are you? What you're seeing is light from the sun reflecting off of those things, going into your eyes. So you're sort of getting reflection, but unlike a mirror, there's nothing behind the mirror. But when that light comes into your eyes, your brain wants to make meaning of it, and it interprets what comes in to your brain. And that interpretation has a lot to do with our past experiences, our conditioning, our unique perception of things, whether we like this or don't like that based on past experiences. You see, so things come into us, unlike a mirror reflecting them perfectly. All of our stuff, our consciousness, impacts how we see it. So two people can be looking at a tree, and one can go, oh, what a beautiful tree. Another one could be thinking, what a weird looking tree. Someone else could go, what an old tree. Someone else could go, oh, what a wise tree. Look at all the years it's been on the planet. It all reflects who the person is, what kind of beliefs they have, what's going on inside of them. And so when someone says a comment about us or does something, it's a comment on them. That doesn't mean that we don't think about it a little bit and go, well, is there any truth to what she's saying or he's saying? And if there is, maybe we can learn from it. But if we don't think so, then we can just let it roll off our back like a duck lets water roll off of its back, right? Makes sense? Because everybody is what psychologists call projecting. We project onto the world our consciousness. When you look at President Biden and that whole situation with the reporter, well, how could the reporter not take that personally? Well, that reporter could, first of all, who knows, maybe he wouldn't take it personally because he's like, I'm just doing my job. That's the question they wanted me to ask. That's what my audience wants me to do. Now, if you were to say, hey, just ask whatever questions you want, he might not have asked that question. So, he might have asked something entirely different. Who knows? Or maybe he did ask the question he wanted to. And then he could say, well, that's the President of the United States calling me stupid. He knows me. We've had some interaction. He knows me. How am I? Well, how could he not take that personally? Maybe he could understand that people project a lot of times based on how they're feeling physically, based on their state of mind in the moment, based on their conditioning, based on their own consciousness. So even the President of the United States is a human being and has his or her own stuff. I affirm her own stuff eventually, right? And some people could say, well, maybe there's something inside of President Biden that, is projecting stupid. Some people don't have the biggest, don't think he's necessarily the smartest man in the world. I like him, and I'm not trying to get political. But what I'm saying is we project stuff. We project stuff onto other people. And I like the man, so let me just say that much. There's a Hebrew word called ayin, which means eye. It means eye, and it also means fountain. So our eyes register what's coming in from the outside, but that's not all. Our eyes, our consciousness acts like a fountain. So interesting that word should have both connotations, eye and fountain. The eye not only registers from the outside in, but it projects like a fountain from the inside out. Maybe you've known people. I know a few people who have this inner feeling and have struggled with it, I think all their life, that they were not very smart. Not very smart. And so consequently, they tend to make fun of people who aren't very smart, because they're smart people, but they got this image of not being very smart and they project it onto other people. That's how that can happen. That can happen. Whenever it's been said by psychologists and spiritual teachers, whenever you have a strong feeling about somebody else, like how arrogant that man is, or whatever it could be, how selfish she is. Whenever we have a strong feeling about somebody or something, guess what? This is tough. This is difficult. There's a very good chance that very same quality is somewhere in our own consciousness. Late Eric Butterworth said, watch who you point the finger at, because you got 3 fingers pointing back at you. Right? Now, sometimes I wonder about that too. So that's a tough one. And sometimes we go, I don't have that quality inside of me. Well, here's the thing. Carl Jung talked about the shadow self. That we can have that quality inside of ourselves, but we don't want to acknowledge that it's there. We've repressed it. We can't see that about ourselves. So what happens is someone else mirrors that quality that we have ignored in ourselves. And because we don't like it in ourselves, we don't like it in them. So instead of looking at ourselves and going, having understanding and compassion for that quality in ourselves, instead we get angry at the person. We don't like that person. We don't like that quality, in that person. When there's a great chance that we have that very same quality we don't like. On the flip side is when we like qualities in other people, that's an indication that we have that quality also. You know, you're like, I love that, you know, that, I love whoever it is, Nelson Mandela and what he stood for, what he did, and, you know, his courage and his loyalty and all of that and his perseverance. I love that about him. Well, guess what? That's inside of you. It works similarly. So the point is, we tend to project, people tend to project onto others that which their own beliefs, their own perceptions, their own feelings, how they're feeling, their state of mind, all of that. So we don't have to take it personally. We don't have to take it personally. Jesus said this. He said, Jesus had a sense of humor. He said, judge not. And he said, get the beam out of your own eye so you can see clearly enough to get the speck out of your neighbor's. In other words, you know, we can see all this junk in another person, and he's saying, look, the reason you see all that is because you got a beam in your own eye. You know, imagine a carpenter beam. You got a beam in your eye. Get that out, then you can help get the speck out of your neighbor's. In other words, focus on yourself. Years ago, I read a teacher who said, when something in somebody else is bothering you, pray that Spirit heals you of those own internal judgments that you have that are causing you to judge other people. So that's why we don't need to take things personally, because people are always projecting onto others. And I love this analogy. This is I think a wonderful analogy from Miguel Ruiz, the author of The Four Agreements, in his book, The Fifth Agreement. He says, imagine going into a huge mall. And in that mall, there are hundreds of movie theaters. I like the sound of that already. And you go in and you want to see a movie, and you see up on a billboard, oh, there's a movie with your name on it. So you go in that movie, and there's somebody sitting down, and you go and you sit quietly behind that person, and you look up on the screen, and you recognize all the characters. You recognize your mother, you recognize your father, your siblings, your children, your beloved. It's your life on the movie screen. And there you are. You're the star. And you as the star are acting exactly the way you are. You see yourself just, that's how I am. What a great performance. Academy Award. And then all the characters, the mother, the father, they're all exactly the way you see them. They're perfect. Everybody acts the way you see it. Well, it's so real, you're overwhelmed by it. So you walk out of the theater and you go to a different movie. This movie has your mom's name on the marquee, on the billboard. So you go into the movie theater, there's someone sitting quietly in the movie, and it's your mother. And you sit next to her quietly, she doesn't even know you're there, really. And she's watching the screen. Now, she's the star in this movie, you're a secondary character. Now, you see your brothers and your sister, and you're like, that's not how they are. And then you see your mom performing, and you're like, look at her acting. That's not how she is. She's got this, that's totally a bunch of junk. And then you see, every character in this movie is how your mother perceives herself and how she perceives you. You see yourself and you're like, that's not how I am. Look how she sees me. And then she sees your beloved and you're offended. Oh, how dare her see my beloved like that? And so you leave the movie and you go into another one and you see your you go in and you see your sibling, your brother or your sister, and now they're the star. And that's not how they are, you say. And they see you completely different than how you see yourself. And they see everybody else in your family different than how you see yourself. And the point is, that's how it is. Everybody's a star in their own movie, and everyone else is a secondary character. And everybody sees you from a different point of view, from a different perspective than you see yourself. So why try, this is what the point he makes, why try to get everybody to see you the way you want them to see you, because it doesn't work. They're going to see you the way they see you, based on their experiences, based on their unique consciousness, based on how they want to see themselves. Everybody has their own world, their own perspective that they're living in. And Ruiz is saying that's why one of his 4 agreements is not to take anything personally. Because everybody is projecting their own reality and their own perception of us. Understand that we see the world not as it is, we see the world as we are. Let's not take other people's comments personally, because it's a reflection of what's going on inside of them. Maybe in that moment, maybe because of stuff that's inside of them unhealed. Maybe they contain a belief in them that they're projecting onto you. I've had that experience with one of these people I said who feels like they're dumb. I've had them sort of project that on, seen them do it, projecting it onto other people, because it's their own issue they struggle with. And then let's not take our own negative thoughts about ourselves personally. That's a big one, isn't it? Not taking your own negative thoughts personally. How often we might listen to our own thoughts, like the person who calls themselves, what a stupid idiot I am, or whatever they call themselves. Now if they listen to those thoughts, now that's going to negatively impact them. Sometimes we have to challenge, oftentimes, we've got to remember the truth that I'm a spiritual being. I am God living itself as me. That's who I really am. All the other stuff is judgments. All the other stuff are limiting ideas and thoughts and beliefs about myself. It's not the truth of who I am. It's not the truth of who I am. Some of you know the story. I'll keep it real brief. When I went to college, and a lot was happening in my life. Had my first romantic relationship, and that was tough. We fought a lot, and it was fun in many ways, and it was really tough in others. And being a pretty sensitive kid, it was tough on me. And I started to change. I started to become negative, and not her fault. It was just whatever I needed to learn and experience. That started to happen. And then I started to wonder, what's the purpose of life? Here we in college now, you got to climb the ladder again. Why? What's the point of it all? And also, I picked up Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it confused the heck out of me. I started to become analytical of myself and started to experience paralysis by analysis. And so all that was going on. And I was studying weird yoga philosophy. This was 30 plus years ago, where yoga was weird. People didn't do yoga. Hippies did yoga, fringe people meditated. And here I was studying it and practicing it and had all this other stuff going on inside of me. And I felt a little strange. Somewhere along the line, I developed this thing about people not liking me. And when I went to ministerial school, one of my friends, he's been a friend for years now, Jim Rosemary, wonderful author and teacher and minister. I asked him if I could meet with him once a month, just to ask him questions and, and also to talk to him about some of these things that I was going through and needed some support. And he said, sure. So every month I'd meet with him for an hour or so. And I remember one time leaving the meeting and feeling and thinking, I don't think he likes me. I don't think he likes me. And it was at that point where I thought to myself, you have got to challenge that belief. Because I know he likes me. He's my friend. I play golf with him. We're friends. He meets with me. That was a turning point for me to challenge my own belief, to not take the belief personally, and to challenge it. And that's what I think we need to do. Yeah, we can listen to people's feedback and look at ourselves and go, is there any truth to that? And if there's no truth to it, we can put the umbrella up and let the rain roll off the umbrella. Or we can go, well, okay, let me see what I can do. Maybe I can do better. Let me adjust that some. But it's not who we really are. And I think that oftentimes we've got to challenge beliefs that aren't the truth of who we are. They're a monologue, they're a dialogue, there's a tape that goes on in our heads that we picked up and developed early on or at some point in our life that we've got to become aware of and challenge and not take those thoughts personally. So, one thing we can do is affirm this. I don't take anything personally. And guess what? That means even the compliments that people give us. That's challenging. Even the compliments people give us, because again, that's a reflection of their consciousness. And the main thing is how we feel inside of ourselves. What do we think? How do we feel, right? About what we're doing, what we're saying, how we are being. We know ourselves better than anybody else. And as he points out, we don't really know everybody. We don't really know people like we think we know them. Like in that movie theater, everybody has their own perception. We think we know what they think, and we don't. I don't take anything personally. I don't take anything personally. Would you like to join me in saying that together? I don't take anything personally. Together? I don't take anything personally. A great thing to do is to write that statement out and put it somewhere in your house that you see it regularly. Maybe on your refrigerator, maybe in your bathroom, somewhere to remind you, I don't take anything personally. That's a tough one. But can you imagine yourself living your life now, not taking people's unkind words or criticism personally, not taking your own negative thoughts about yourself personally, just learning from each experience and growing, but not letting any of it disturb the calm peace of your soul. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be a great way to live? That would eliminate a lot of what one interpretation of hell is useless, unnecessary suffering. That would take away a lot of useless, unnecessary suffering. So, think of a time you took something personally. Can you see yourself now reliving that experience and not taking that personally? Yes. Go back in your imagination and see yourself just acknowledging, oh, that's their stuff. That's their own projection coming out. And I know who I am. That's not how I am. I know my intentions. I know where I'm coming from. And I don't take that personally. I don't take anything personally. Imagine the freedom. Imagine the ability to live your life free. We see the world not as it is, but as we are. Don't take other people's comments personally. Don't take your own thoughts personally. And I'm going to close with this cute little story from Chicken Soup for the Soul. A woman was waiting, it's called Cookie Thief. A woman was waiting at an airport one night with several long hours before her flight. She hunted for a book in the airport shop, bought a bag of cookies, and found a place to drop. She was engrossed in her book, but happened to see that the man beside her, as bold as could be, grabbed a cookie or two from the bag between, which she tried to ignore to avoid a scene. She read, munched cookies, and watched the clock as the gutsy cookie thief diminished her stock. She was getting more irritated as the minutes ticked by, thinking if I wasn't so nice, I'd blacken his eye. With each cookie she took, he took one too. When only one was left, she wondered what he'd do. With a smile on his face and a nervous laugh, he took the last cookie and broke it in half. He offered her half as he ate the other. She snatched it from him and thought, oh, brother, this guy has some nerve and he's also rude. Why, he didn't even show any gratitude. She had never known when she had been so galled, and she sighed with relief when her flight was called. She gathered her belongings and headed for the gate, refusing to look back at the thieving ingrate. She boarded the plane and sank in her seat and saw her book, which was almost complete. As she reached in her baggage, she gasped with surprise. There was her bag of cookies right before her eyes. If mine are here, she moaned with despair, then the others were his, and he tried to share. Too late to apologize, she realized with grief that she was the rude one, the ingrate, the thief. Let's get still for a moment. And we just have to enjoy this experience on planet Earth, how interesting and full of variety it is. That each one of us is a unique individual with a unique perception, and that makes life so interesting. And at the same time, we realize that people judge, people project. And that we don't have to take things personally. That we are unique, individualized expressions of God. That we can know ourselves. We can know what our intentions are. And therefore we need not be hurt or offended. That we can truly, as the sages and masters tell us, live our life centered in peace and joy. Live our life in freedom. Freedom to be who we are. Now, we don't need to try to please everyone. We don't need to be who everyone else is going to like and accept. we can be who we are. Be authentic. And love ourselves. And appreciate ourselves. And realize that God loves us exactly as we are. That we are the very living expression of God. Whole, complete, loved. We've been gifted this life to live it fully. And as Jamie Lula in his song says, I'm going to stop wasting my time. I'm not going to waste one moment worrying, fretting, hurting over what someone else says or does. Thank you, Father, Mother God, for this possibility. Thank you for guiding us, directing us, reminding us, strengthening us, encouraging us, and giving us the support that we need to live in freedom, to live in joy, to live in peace. And so it is. Amen. Well, we appreciate those of you who join us today and who are with us here in the service, and those of you online sharing this service with us today. I suspect there are a lot of people struggling with taking things personally, so if you would, please tell a friend, share this message with others so they too can start to live more fully and happily and freely. I want to thank Joanna Beekman and Jamie Lula for sharing their musical talents with us today. May you each have a beautiful rest of the week, and let us join together in knowing our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yea, God. Amen. God bless you. Namaste. Have a beautiful rest of the day, everyone.